Embroidery in India varies according to the region and material used. It consists of a wide range of embroidery styles. The eloquent tradition of embroidery fabric persists in India. The states and region of India each have their own style. Fabrics aren't just decorated with needlework. Community stories also adorn them. Embroidery is more than decoration for these communities. It's a profound form of personal, social, and spiritual expression, an identity marker connecting tribes through decades of shared stories woven into every stitch. Let's look back at the history of embroidery. Believed to be originated in China, it developed in the 3rd century. The existence of needlework, which later formed embroidery technique, can be confirmed by archaeological findings dating back to the 2000 BC. Emperor Akbar was keenly interested in textile aesthetics, which allowed it to grow to remarkable levels in the 16th century. The collection of Indian textiles ranges from rare courtly pieces to archaeological fragments to everyday garments and fabrics dating from the 14th century to the present day. Embroidery remains one of India's most recognizable and most prized textile traditions. So, let us discover some of these most well-known forms of traditional Indian embroidery and how these techniques are today being adapted. Chain stitching. The extremely precise repeat chain stitch embroidery of Gujarat, worked by professional male embroiderers, was so fine that it became sought after by members of India's Mughal court. One particularly stunning example is an early 17th century silk embroidered satin hunting coat. Gujarati chain stitching was also traded to the west through the East India Company in the 16th, 17th and 18th centuries. The exotic patterns became popular in Europe for furnishing and bed hangings. Ari work is kind of chain stitching done using a hooked needle called an awl. The technique likely originated in the Mochi community, a group that traditionally made and repaired footwear. Originally developed for embroidering decorative elements onto leather shoes and horse trappings, Ari was later adapted for use on cloth. Here you can see a 1700 piece of embroidered cotton with silk yarn. Zardozi. The name of this technique is derived from two words, zar and dozi. Zardozi is an extravagant form of embroidery characterized by the use of gold or silver, wrapped threads and embellishments. There are many varieties of Zardozi. One form called Tilla work is created by twisting gold and silver wrapped thread into tiny spirals, which are tacked down to hold them in place. Zardozi was a favorite form of embroidery for palace furnishings and animal trappings in India during the 18th and 19th centuries, and is still used to decorate special occasion garments, although the expense of the materials means that modern forms of this embroidery often use imitation of gold and silver. Chicken is a type of white work embroidery worked in very fine stitches on delicate cotton fabrics. This unique subtle shadow work is designed using herringbone stitches on the back of the fabric, resulting in a dainty shadow on the face of the fabric. Traditionally, chicken curry motifs were embroidered on muslin cloth, white fabric using white thread. The finest examples are usually attributed to Lucknow, which specializes in this technique. Traditionally, chicken textiles are collaborative. Specialist embroiderers work particular stitches, then hand the piece on to someone else for the next stage. Katha, a type of embroidery from West Bengal and Bangladesh. Kathas are mats, covers, bedspreads, and other household textiles traditionally made out of old and worn out garments such as saris or dhotis. Layers of this recycled cloth are quilted together in simple running stitch, and embroidered designs are added using darning stitches, satin stitch, and buttonhole stitch. Traditionally, the colored embroidery thread was drawn from the borders of the old garments used to make the gatha. The gatha tradition transforms worn out textiles that would otherwise have been thrown away into beautiful pieces with unique personal designs. Fulkari is the traditional embroidery of the Punjab. Fulkari, literally flower work, is worked in a simple darning stitch from the reverse side of hand-woven cotton cloth, usually dyed terracotta red or indigo blue. Vibrant floss silk is used to create a lustrous effect. There are many different styles of Fulkari work, reflecting the rich cultural and religious mix of Punjab region. The finest pieces are head covers in which nearly the whole cloth is covered with dense stitching. These are called bagh, which means garden, and are traditionally made in preparation for weddings. A single bagh may take over a year to complete. Shisha or mirrorwork embroidery is most common in India's northwestern states, with Kutch, a district of Gujarat, a particularly rich source. Beyond solely decorative use, some communities believe mirrorwork is auspicious as a tool for warding off the evil eye, reflecting bad luck and evil spirits away from the wearer. The reflective elements of shisha work may have originally developed from the use of naturally occurring mica. However, from the 19th century onwards, pieces of specially made mirrored glass were widely available. Traditionally, mirrored glass was blown by hand and then cut into different shapes using special scissors dampened to prevent shards from scattering. Today, thicker factory-made glass is more common. Fabrics lavishly decorated with the iridescent wing cases of beetles were particularly fashionable in the 19th century, although the technique is likely much older. The cases were pierced with holes and clipped into shape, then sewn directly onto the fabric ground. Designs were built up using hundreds of cases, frequently in combination with gold-wrapped thread and embellishments. Here you can see an example of a dress fabric embroidered with beetle wing cases. The iridescent wing cases sparkled on head covers, blouses, and accessories. Beetle wing case embroidery also became popular with Western women who made gowns and accessories out of beetle wing case embroidered muslins and nets. The shimmering emerald color is not a pigmentation, but a result of the microscopic structure of the cases themselves, which naturally reflects green-blue light. Although they were valued for the permanence of their color, durability, and relative hardness, the wing cases were still fragile and could snap, so were often used only as a trim. The Banjara community originates from the nomadic tribes who worked as the traveling suppliers of cattle, salt, and grain to the Mughal armies. Their distinctive colorful embroidery embodies this tradition, being used to help make robust garments and storage bags capable of withstanding the day-to-day rigors of a life lived constantly on the move. Banjara women often wear colorful dresses and heavy jewelry. Embroidered items in Banjara households are also striking, with with entire surfaces often filled with colorful geometric designs. The stitches used in this form of embroidery are variations of flame-like Florentine stitch, tent stitch, and satin stitch, which entirely cover a section of fabric. Pieces are often further embellished with pom-poms, cowrie shells, and mirrors. Chamba Rumal gets its name from Chamba, a hill station in Himachal Pradesh, where it has been practiced for centuries. The earliest records of the region dates back to the 2nd century BC, making it one of the most ancient destinations in the state. The region is known for its history, architecture, and landscapes, but the local community is also known for its arts and crafts, in particular the miniature Pahari paintings. This intricate yet traditional form of pictorial embroidery was beautifully adorned on hand-spun fabric using an untwisted silken thread, which finds its roots in Pahari paintings. The motifs on this embroidery mainly revolved around divinities such as Shiva, Lakshmi, Durga, Vishnu, Ganesh, and Lakshmi. This unconventional form of art was also exchanged by the bride and groom's families as a sign of goodwill. Apli craft in Kutch is one of the oldest artworks of Gujarat. Its history dates back to the time when women in North Gujarat made quilts and wall hangings, primarily for domestic purposes, with human and animal figure designs stitched on them. The process involves sewing many small pieces of cloth onto a larger piece of cloth. This stitching fabric over fabric creates a more vibrant design with enhanced visual appeal. The larger piece, which forms the base, is usually thick, and the other cloth pieces from which the designs are cut are usually thin. Today, the art form is used for decorating quilts, pillow covers, bedspreads, cushion covers, tents, decorative wall hangings, etc. These quilts and quilt covers, while more modest in detail than many of the heavily embroidered textiles from the area, exemplify this regional style and express the significance of textiles in daily life. In place of embroidery, most of the elaborate designs on the quilts are formed by stitching together pieces of fabric or by applying shaped fabrics to a foundation. All of the quilts incorporate fabrics that were salvaged from the worn cotton saris. Similar prints and patterns can be seen in the silk sari and veil on display. Whether they are constructed from recycled or new fabric, quilts are considered a sign of family's wealth and position and serve as a point of pride and heritage. Kasuti embroidery has been a staple for Indian women since the 7th century CE during the Chalukya period. It originally developed in the Karnataka area of India and then spread to the surrounding areas from there. The word Kasuti was derived from two separate words, Kai, which means hand, and Suti means cotton. So Kasuti came to mean cotton threads worked by hand. During the time of the Mysore kingdom, 17th century, one of the 64 arts that women were required to learn was Kasuti. Both common women and those of high standing were expected to be able to adorn their sari with Kasuti motifs with skill and dexterity. It was first only done in the Dharwad region. Over time, it has expanded into other parts of Karnataka and is now used throughout South India. The motifs used traditionally were inspired from the tile mosaics found in temples or derived from nature. Kasuti, being worked on a grid, creates stylized or geometric versions of these sources of designs. Lotus flower, elephants, temple towers, conch shells, repeating patterns of crop fields, and other symbols of regions, and philosophical significance are often used. Kashida is a popular Kashmiri embroidery encouraged by the beautiful surroundings of the valley. This type of embroidery style is practiced by men in the region. In the 15th century, the Sultan introduced the art of Kashida Kari. Weavers were brought from Turkestan and Persia to introduce new styles of weaving techniques. This type of embroidery is very popular because of its color, texture, design, and techniques. The motifs in Kashida are inspired by nature, including both flora and fauna of Kashmir. The most common themes of Kashida embroidery are birds like kingfisher, butterflies, fruits, vegetables like mango, almonds, cherry, grapes, and flowers like lotus, blossoms, creepers, maple leaves. The best material for the embroidery is wool. Embroidery is often evident on shades of white and light shades, and sometimes they are also on pastel colors, but nowadays they are using a variety of colors like blue, yellow, purple, red, green, black. Kashida is particularly practiced by men and is a commercial craft, revealed on shawls as well as in cottage industries of Srinagar. The stitches used in this include satin stitch, chain stitch, stem stitch, talibar, batachik, and darning stitch. Embroidery is performed using cotton, silk, and wool. Threads of white, green, yellow, purple, blue, and scarlet colors. Today, contemporary designers are adapting these styles of traditional Indian embroidery to create cutting-edge fashions. Here is an example of a design made by a contemporary top designer who reimagined the traditional Indian embroidery, applique and beading and applied these techniques with a breathtaking level of detail to create clothes that celebrate these handmaking skills. The skirt and top assemble in our collection is typical of his work, inspired by his Indian heritage, but with a contemporary twist and an international outlook. The upper skirt is made from silk with gold applique and embroidered with crystal beads, pearls and sequins, while the jersey top is decorated with iridescent stripes, metals and pearls. Before we begin, let's look at the tools and materials we will need for the embroidery project. So the very first thing we need will be a fabric. You need a base to stitch on. Almost all kinds of fabrics can be used for hand embroidery, but certain fabrics are tricky to work with and might require more experience and skill. So the best material to start with is cotton, and preferably a light colored one, as it is easy to mark over it. The second material we will need are the embroidery needles. You need an embroidery needle to stitch. The difference between a regular embroidery needle and a sewing needle lies in their eyes. An embroidery needle has longer and bigger eye than a standard sewing needle. This is basically to accommodate the different strands of embroidery for a project. The third material we need are embroidery threads. The most common thread used in embroidery is a stranded embroidery cotton. This thread comes most often in skeins like this and is made of 6 strands that can be pulled out to regulate the thickness of the thread. A good quality thread will have a nice sheen to it. Most common brands are Anchor, Boss Poly and DMC. The next material we need is a embroidery hoop. This comes in various sizes and shapes. Size of the hoop is basically the diameter of the hoop. The hoop keeps the fabric tight and taut while stitching. For this project, I will be using a bamboo hoop. Next up, we will need a pair of scissors. Use a small pair of scissors to cut your thread, and you can also have a large fabric scissors to cut your fabric. Next up is a water-soluble pen. There are many ways we can transfer a pattern on a fabric. You can also use a pencil, but for this project I will be using a water-soluble pen to transfer my design on the fabric. Benefit of it is that it doesn't leave any marks on fabric like a pencil does. Next, we will need a ruler. It's always beneficial to have one, as it can help with small tasks like cutting fabric, measuring spaces between stitches, etc. Next up is a tracing paper. You will simply need this to transfer your design on the fabric. Last but not the least is an embroidery stand. Although the embroidery stand is not a necessity, it does help stabilizing the hoop while you are stitching. This can often be used for complex projects with large surface of embroideries. Now let's set up our embroidery hoop. For this we will need our fabric and our hoop. So we will start off with our embroidery hoop. First, loosen the screw at the top. Separate your inner hoop from the outer hoop. Now place this inner ring in the center and place your fabric over this. Place the outer ring over the fabric. Make sure the screw is actually loosened enough for the outer ring to fit over the inner ring, like this. Gently push the outer hoop over top of inner hoop and then tighten your screw. Once it is tightened enough, adjust the tension of the fabric from all edges. Like pull the fabric from the edges to adjust the tension. And make sure you have clean edges with no wrinkles. So as you can see, I have adjusted tension here. So my hoop is ready. For the embroidery.